Namaste. We have already interviewed Yogacharini Aishwarya, the younger sister of tonight's speaker, Yogacharya Srikant of Toronto, Canada. Srikant is a professor of mathematics, a skilled craftsman, and an enthusiastic sports person, and a loving father of two, Tarindev and Katya, and husband to Samar. He undertook the 6 months yoga teacher training course almost 25 years ago. Since that time, he has returned for further sadhana every few years. He and his wife Samar were married at Sri Kamiswami Madam, Tatanjavadi, Pondicherry. He has supported Dr. Anand sir in his tours to Canada and USA. His great contribution to the Parampariyai, materially, emotionally, and intellectually, is one of the strongest pillars in organization. He shares his yoga knowledge with his colleagues and students. At one time before the ashram, he considered a professional career as a model. But the yoga turned his life upside down and he entered the teaching career and the Grihastha stage. Now we can enjoy a frank conversation with this charming and handsome yogi. Namaste, Srikant.
Namaste, Dhivya.
So really happy to have you, and it's been an episode that I have been waiting for because it has been such a long time that we haven't interacted like this, and it's a different interaction. So looking forward to this.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, so we are moving into the slow question answering, your 5 questions today. So going to the first definition section. What is your own personal definition of the word yoga?
That is a hard question to answer because I feel it's a little bit like a moving target as I grow. But I think the sort of silver lining or the same element that has been part of my thinking about what yoga is would be best defined for me as a way of life. So for me, I interpret or I see yoga more as a way of life, a holistic way of life. At the same time, it is also providing me with the tools to make my life meaningful. And so it's a very general definition, and some parts of one's life evolution, we get more and more specific with what yoga is. And one thing that very early on made me understand that I didn't understand it was when I was doing the first 6 months training course, and I ended up being, I mean, apart from your mom was also doing the course with me, I was the only kind of student there. Your mom was a student, she also was my teacher, so it was we started with 3 students from outside of India, and ended up with Devasana and myself at the end of the course. And at one point, I know that Amaji had said, who is willing to learn yoga for yoga? And I didn't understand it. I thought I was learning yoga for yoga, but when she put it that way, I realized that I was just basically scratching the surface of what yoga truly is. But my initial definition, or the definition that I latch onto, or that gives me a little bit of an anchor in my life, is yoga as a way of life, which helps me unify everything that I do, even though it's not, if you're looking at it from the exterior, it might not look like yoga, but I try to make it as close or as a unifying principle in my life.
Wonderful, Srikant, and a nice way of putting the words together. And thank you for your beautiful thoughts. So moving on to the next one from the sadhana section. You are a family man with 2 children, and you are a busy lecturer. How do you manage to do your yoga sadhana?
It is a question I'm trying to answer every day. I've gone through phases. So initially, when my yoga sadhana actually started before the ashram, it started when I was around, I would say 11 or 12, and maybe a little bit sooner than that. And I had asthma. And I tried medication. It wasn't very severe, but it was enough for me to be sort of diagnosed with allergy to dust, which is fine. I can keep my room clean. Allergy to chocolate, which was not fine because my grandmother lived in Switzerland and we get a lot of chocolate every Christmas. So something had to change. And also allergy to animals, to dust, to fur. And I've always had cats, so that again was an issue, on top of the actual short of breath and the fact that medication was not helping my specific case. So my father, who had been the student of Swamiji, had remembered the breathing techniques called the Hatina group. He did not tell me what it was, he didn't tell me it was yoga, but we started sadhana every morning from whatever time it was, maybe from 6 to 7, or was it from 5 to 6, for 6 months straight, and practiced with my father every morning. And all the symptoms of asthma disappeared. And then I was able to resume all my normal activities, and this pursued all the way till the age of 16, where I'd gone sick and had bronchitis, and all the symptoms reappear, so we started that sadhana again. And so that was kind of my introduction, without knowing that that was my introduction to yoga, or understanding what yoga truly is. And then coming back from the first 6 months training course, working off all that beautiful energy, having been doing yoga sadhana in such an incredible setting at Nanda Ashram, I was able to sustain 2 hours, but even those 2 hours were frustrating me because compared to what I was doing, I felt that something was missing. I think by over the age of 40, I realized that what's missing is up in my head. It's my perception of what I'm doing. And so yes, my yoga sadhana has settled to minimum of prayers, morning arti, and before, as I wake up first thing, and before going to bed, prayers. That just helps me frame my day. And I've included my children in the evening arti. In terms of physical practices, I would go in and out and do 1 hour, 1 hour and a half, 30 minutes. But the frustration was always there because we have, working as a high school teacher, have that part, and then other things happening just to be able to live, and other responsibilities, family, even before having my own family. Was able to create a strict minimum. This, I think, was, again, I don't think I know how much it was when saying you need a strict minimum, whatever it is, but keep to it. Don't go under that. Anything over that is bonus, but do that. So quiet sitting, deep breathing, whatever, Sukha Pranayama, Savitri rhythm, whatever that is, and then a minimum of a few standing postures, and 3 rounds of Varuna Surya Namaskar, and as much relaxation as possible. So that's basically been my yoga practices sadhana. Again, reflecting back on Amaji kind of laughing at me as I write to her and I go into thoughts, challenges. She basically told me, in not the same words, but I think, paraphrasing, and she's probably said, silly monkey, your life, your family is your sadhana. Being able to take care of your children is part of your sadhana. And that has helped me restructure, reframe, and enjoy more. Not my lacking of what I could be doing, but enjoying what I am doing, and then therefore be more fully present and a little bit more aware of what it is. So that would be my sadhana. I mean, Shankaprakshalana sometimes, yes. Much easier when you have a group. But all I'm saying is that the practices and the everyday life, living consciously with awareness every moment, and that also is part of my sadhana.
Really nice, Shrikant. We really got an outline, and it's really nice how you put it. Like, family is your sadhana. That is quite an important one, especially in this stage of life, and very nice. So, moving on to the next section, the contemporary yoga scene. What is your opinion of the status of the contemporary yoga scene, especially in the present time of the corona crisis?
So, the contemporary yoga scene, I have mixed feelings about it. I'm not the most of all the students of this beautiful tradition. I am not the student who teaches the most yoga. I teach math, but it's the same thing. So I'm sure others will be better suited to answer that question. But in terms of my perspective, my limited perspective, for the teachings of yoga I have done in different contexts, would it be my old high school, would it be some friends, would it be through trying to teach my colleagues, which is always an interesting situation to be teaching your principal, your VP, your colleagues, and maybe sometimes my students, I teach in a high school that has about 1,200 students, so I would offer those classes too. It's been mixed. So people come in with very limited understanding. They would say, okay, I want to do some Pilates, maybe a little bit of yoga, and I'm trying to not make it too complicated, but also not to misrepresent what I have been taught, and therefore I'm trying to share with others. Some people are not interested, some people have misconceptions. If you do talk about Bhagavad Gita or any concepts, morals and ethics, it becomes very difficult to walk that thin line of wanting to teach in the proper setting or in the proper framework, but again, not hitting those alarm bells that some have when they think about this. This has nothing to do with religion, but there's a cultural background context that needs at least to be underlined for understanding. So I think, put it this way, when I have been teaching, it's felt good. I've heard this through Ananda ji and through Amaji. If there's only one person that actually learns in your class and it is yourself, then it's successful. So sometimes but people have said they feel good. So whatever that means to them, they feel good leaving at the end of the class. So it has, for me, that level, met a certain level of success. Though obviously the challenges of understanding what yoga truly is, and me being able to communicate that in an effective way has been a process that's still ongoing. In terms of more specifically in these days, I think yoga in this context of COVID-19 and social distancing, there should be physical distancing, as Anandaji pointed out. I think it goes two ways. For those who are seeking, consciously or not, open, consciously or not, to true yoga, this is a wonderful time. Just having Dr.Ananda online, even being able to see Anaji for that one interview, I mean, almost made me cry. Sorry. Because, my apologies. because I know we are very close, and sometimes even physical distance creates a proximity because we're not caught up in the everyday aspect of things. That being said, having this constant link on a daily basis with Dr.Ananda is a true blessing. And it has helped increase my sadhana and my understanding. But mostly, yeah, my understanding, my mindset. I'm a 7, so I'm an introvert. I would not necessarily find a little bit of isolation to be that bad. I'm not saying it's good for me, but I'm saying I'm comfortable with it. And being able to reach out and to understand these teachings, as Anandaji is presenting in such his own unique way, the same teachings I was reading the step-by-step book when I was 19 from Swamiji, and living through Amaji, and having senior students like Renuka and Nanini also, all that, is somewhere, and it just gets contextualized. So in that sense, on a more personal level, I find that this situation, I'm putting all, the lives that are being lost. I'm putting away people who are losing their jobs. I'm putting that aside just in terms of personal sadhana. I think it's a great opportunity. For those who are not understanding what true yoga is, I think it's kind of given the same. Whatever, if you're in a yoga class and you're thinking of it as just pure exercise, or you're doing it through a Zoom meeting, whatever physical benefits you get from it, just by stretching, and then it stays the same. Maybe you do a little bit more of it. Maybe it gives you a gateway into maybe trying to go a little bit deeper, and then going online. And so it's, I think, even though technology takes us away from our everyday, our present moment in many ways. I'm a high school teacher, so I confiscate cell phones a lot. So I'm trying to teach my math lesson and having to take their cell phones away and bring it back after. So I get that aspect, but the other aspect has created the opportunity for such beautiful interaction. And even when, if Anandaji can continue this forever, that would be lovely. But even if he does, and I'm pretty sure he has so many other commitments, but being able to go through these videos, and then getting more out of it, not because there's anything new in the videos themselves, but because we're growing as people, hopefully, and more open to really understanding deeper meaning, or just by our own effort, self-effort, our own sadhana, we get to understand a bit more of what he's teaching us. And you as well, because what you've been doing is just phenomenal. We always work with comparisons, even if they're not great, but I can't imagine being your age and doing what you're doing. It's phenomenal. Anyway, so that's my idea or my perspective on contemporary yoga scene, as limited as it may be.
Well, I'm just admiring the way you're putting your answers. It's in such a sequence, actually, I share the same common thing as in school and all that. When I present my essays or speech, I have a process that many other kids don't have. So I try to help them in doing that, but they are like, what are you speaking about? Like, they don't understand it. But I'm just seeing that we share that common thing. So I really like your answer. And I know all of you out there are looking out. So going to the yogic character section, I'm not mentioning the number. What is the quality of character most necessary for someone who is walking the yoga path?
That is I would say all of them, and if you could just perfect one of them, as they're all interconnected, that would be sufficient. But that's kind of a politician's answer. So I'll answer the one that initially I thought was satya, truthfulness. I've always tried to, like, even before, as a young boy, like whenever I can remember, from 4, 5, 6, I've always tried to understand what are the rules, how things work. My father initially was Protestant, and then he became Buddhist. My mother is Indonesian, so she has a lot of different influences as well. And I started off in Senegal, but I was mostly brought up in Montreal, in Quebec, in Canada. And so you have a little bit of exposure to Catholicism and Protestant. And just this, when they try to explain it to young kids, they kind of say, this is heaven, this is hell, if you're good, you go to heaven. It just seemed like I'm young, but I'm not. It doesn't make, it's too simple. It's too simple, it doesn't make sense. And nothing is fully good, nothing is fully bad. You can make mistakes, and what kind of mistakes can you make for it to be permanent, forever, hell? And it didn't make sense. So being exposed to different cultures, the concept of reincarnation, the concept of continuity of the soul made much more logical sense, even with my mathematical mindset. It just made more sense. So truthfulness, people who can see the truth behind what people say, the truth behind what is out there, and then can live in life, that seemed to be such a beautiful and noble aspiration, goal to go towards. But as I have grown, I've realized that I'm more and more unqualified to know what the truth is. I've tried to approach it a lot with my logical mindset. And I've seen in many situations that having a very logical, systematic, mathematical approach, I say this, therefore the other person understands what I say, and therefore we can agree on this contract or this, it has not always worked. Often it doesn't work. It's a good starting point, it's not sufficient. So to truthfulness, you would have to include love, heartfulness, compassion. And obviously Satya is that, but my understanding of this sort of putting things in the box and they just stay in the box and they don't grow, what Ananda's been talking about, don't put things in the box, I'm trying to break open that box. So my approach to Satya has been fruitful, yes, but limited in one way. And so to better answer this question, I think that underlining Satya, underlining Ahimsa, I think the ability to really, with courage, with open-mindedness, delve into Swadhyaya would be the quality most necessary for someone like me, because I know Amaji's message was cheerfulness, and it's simple, but it's so true. But for myself, and that's obviously an aim, but I think sometimes to get to that level of simplicity, which is not easy, where Amaji is at, I'll probably have to take a more complicated route. And if by the end of this incarnation, I'm able to get closer to Amaji's definition of what the simplest quality and the best quality is, then I'll be very happy. But for myself, Swadhyaya, I think, will be the tool that encompasses many things and helps me move forward.
Such interesting and nice answer, Srikant. You just put a smile on our face, reminding us of how important cheerfulness is. Like we keep on hearing it, like it, as we learned from Dr. Sir, nagging is the best technique in today's class. You keep repeating it like a mantra: cheerfulness, cheerfulness, cheerfulness. So thank you, Srikant, for bringing in that. And your final question from the slow question answering from the yoga teaching section. Sometimes you teach yoga classes to your fellow teachers. What do you teach them?
So I haven't taught that much, but I've taught throughout many years, for over 20 years. It can be through my colleagues, it can be through my friends. I find myself starting with the basics. So the Stama City group, if you don't know how to stand correctly, all the rest is kind of difficult. Obviously, I don't start with the Stama City group. I start with, I would say one third priming the pump. So jatis, stretching, quiet sitting, obviously. Then I would move on to Samasthiti group, submission postures. Before that, the Yogacharya Srikant. Just basic concepts that touch a little bit of everything. Being able to sit quietly, being able to move with purpose, being able to move with breath, introducing these concepts of energy. But if I just talk about this is for energy. I've just lost many people, so I just say just focus on your breath, brings into concentration, dharana. As we're standing up, learning how to stand up as human beings, then a little bit more jatis. I like to teach the Surya Namaskar. Nandaji has made a very nice book on the Surya Namaskar, so I go with the ones I'm more familiar with and I've practiced more, that's what I need. And then as years have passed, I decide to go on one or the other, start exploring. As I teach, I learn a little bit more. Samasthiti group, going down back to the floor. All this is not in one session that I'm talking about, staggered over months, of course. Loma to Loma group I've been able to attend, and even with some people that I've been able to teach for longer periods of time, even if it's not continuous. The Hatinas also have been, or versions of the Hatinas, have been parts of the teachings I've been able to share. And a little bit of Om chanting, but then again, people will think it's religious when it's just focusing. So I do that, but in small quantities, just so it is somewhere in their life.
Really nice, Srikant, to get that side. So thank you for answering all these questions so nicely. And now we are jumping into the rapid fire, the most interesting part of every episode I've been seeing. And the people's response to that is really great and it's really fascinating. And I feel surprised actually. I did it in a joyful manner. I just wanted to add some fun to it, but I didn't think that it would turn out so nicely. So are you ready?
Sure.
So your first one is COVID-19.
Time to go within. We are going back into isolation for those who are lucky or unlucky, depending on their mindset. You're stuck with people, the same people. It's always a great opportunity, so that's always lucky, but it's not always pleasant. I've found it to be pleasant because I've been able, I'm a teacher, but I haven't taught my kids, right? I teach my kids other things, but on the academia side, I've left it, they're young, so I like academics. I'm a high school teacher, but I understand the place of education and it's just a small part. And if they can enjoy it, that's more important. And they can feel good. And at their age, socialization, I think, is the most important part. And this is why it's so difficult for them. But being able to spend that much time with my kids has been a blessing. So spending time with my kids, spending time with my wife, spending time with my niece, who has been staying with us for a full year from France. And she's 15 and she has her own reality at home. And I teach teenagers. I have never had one in my house for that long, and having to act as a uncle has been a very important experience and challenging because you want to know what to do, not to do. I know this is rapid fire, so I'll close it. I just forgot. But yes, it's been a good time. in that sense. I don't want people to take things out of context. I understand it's a difficult time financially. I understand I've had a lot of students, some have actually had contracted the virus. I've been in constant communication because I was teaching at the same time, so that's been tough. And trying to create structure when I didn't have structure, I had to create my own at home, but also create structure for my students and for their families, and staying in tight communication with 90 families throughout this entire time, continuing my yoga sadhana, trying to not miss any of Dr. Ananda's or your online sharings. But that piece put aside, personally, it's been a great opportunity for growth.
Your next one is your family.
My family is, it's love. It's difficult at the same time. It's challenging. It's humbling because they bring out all my shortcomings. Every single one of them, every day. I'm the most patient person in class, in social circumstances. But to keep my patience with my own children is something else. It's I can have 30 unruly kids in a classroom, 75 minutes, and within a year I can manage with a little bit of class and decency. And with my own children, I'm okay. And probably what I consider to be losing my temper or losing my patience is probably not bad for a lot of other people. It doesn't really matter in terms of comparison. It's just that if I thought I was here, I realized for my children I'm not there, and therefore it's been a they're great teachers. They basically underline what I need to work on and burst my bubble when they need to be burst.
Your third one is yoga.
Yoga is my life. It's not an abstract concept. Or when it is, the parts of yoga that are abstract, I'm trying to materialize. And it's been my anchor, my reference, my structure, my aspiration. Yeah, it's a beautiful part. I don't teach yoga as much as I know I should. And part of it is I'm an introvert and I'm teaching like 7 hours a day. So that part is not, but the times where I do teach, I feel that I grow. And so I know that is another part that needs to be balanced. But again, as yoga sadhana is more than just, not more than just, let me rephrase that. It is also teaching, but also it doesn't have to be in a structured way, but I mean, I learn from people, I hopefully learn from interactions. And so yoga as a way of life is beautiful.
Nice. And the next one is India.
India, it is an incredible culture. Initially coming from Indonesia, well, not coming from Indonesia, but coming from an Indonesian background, and having visited Indonesia before coming to India for the first time. I had gone to Indonesia, I would say 8 to 10 times. And I thought I understood. And there's a lot of links, there's a lot of heritage, Indonesian heritage that comes from India. And throughout the millennia, it's developed. But it is very different. And the first time you get out of a plane, first time, it is intense. But with the guidance of Amaji, with the guidance of Renukaji, with the guidance of Swamiji laying the foundation, even Anandaji, who was studying while I was studying the first time, and Vipassana, I got such a beautiful introduction to what India is, like the essence. And so when I speak, and I can speak to academics, I can speak to Indians, sometimes I feel I have a different perspective. Well, we all have different perspectives, because they're talking about everyday life, reality, whereas my introduction is more foundational, more the essence of, or the reasons, even though I don't understand it fully, but the reasons, or the raison d'être, the reasons behind every part of Indian cultural society, and being able to be privy to that has been very big boon.
The next one is Ananda Ashram.
Home. It is. It's really not always easy, because I always have to be on my best behavior. But best behavior not because I'm mischievous, but just because everything, it's intense. It's not a holiday in the sense of I can go to a beach and just not think about things, or just, even when it's not structured, even when you do your yoga sadhana in the summer, there's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be something that needs to be done in a proper way. And sometimes you're trying to decode, am I doing this properly? And because time is limited in one way, you want it to be as, you don't want to be, you want to be as helpful as possible, and you want to do things in the correct way. And I feel that I'm a student, but often I've been put in a situation where I'm not a student. And so when I had been helping out the 6-month course for when I was doing my senior yoga training, it was uncomfortable, and that's how you grow. But you want the growth, but you don't want the discomfort. And for me, discomfort is teaching something I don't fully master. And you don't master it until you teach it. So that's kind of, I know it's my kind of challenge to be able to get out of that mindset. And so that's what I mean by uncomfortable. So Ananda Ashram is home. It's an intense home. It's an anchor as well. It's my, yeah.
Your next one is you.
Sorry?
Your next one is you.
Oh, me. Oh, yeah. I'm trying to figure that one out. Me specifically, just whatever comes to mind.
Yeah.
Okay, so generally, I'm a person who has multiple interests. I like woodworking. I love sports. Never figured out that sports and health are sometimes contradictory. So I'm learning from those injuries. And I enjoy teaching very much. I don't enjoy the politics of education. I spend a lot of time teaching, so I spend a lot of time thinking about what I'm doing, the framework, where are we guiding these young humans. Part of what I think is that when we don't show the link between cause and effect, that can be an issue. So that is, as a teacher, as a parent, it's probably one of the greatest responsibilities, and as a student of yoga, which, I think I started off when I was pretty young, and many lifetimes to come.
Your next one is love.
Love. Love is I haven't found a better definition. I don't think I could, but one that best resonates for me is deep interest. Amaji had talked about it, not talked about it, she had coined it, and that's how I see my love for my wife. That's how I see love for my children. That's how I see love for everything I do. Would it be renovations, woodworking, started doing some metalwork, some welding as well. Interacting with people, my family, my parents, my friends, my yoga family, gardening, everything. Deep interest. And as your interest deepens, as your understanding, as you grow, you manifest it differently, you do it a little bit better, and you show it, communicate it well. So love is also about communication, and trying to do that more and more in a more effective way.
So the next one is health.
Health, it's a means and a way, it's a means and a goal in itself. Like health can be, I see it as balance, and it's balancing the holistic approach of your mindset, your emotions, your body. And sometimes the best teacher is the most brutal one, the grossest one, which is your body. And I've learned a lot from my basketball injuries. I've learned about my mindset. I was a kind of that very intense, like very calm person, but when you get myself on a basketball court, you know, most important is playing well. I didn't care about winning, but I cared about giving my 100%. But that also meant even if I get injured, it's okay as long as I, you know, in terms of strategic on the court, that was the right play to make. Even if, you know, you have a 300-pound person running straight at me, I'll stand there, take a charge, fly 2 ways, but I'll get the call, so we'll get the ball, and then we can move on to the next play. I'm still dealing with those injuries. And but it's helped me understand things, and so part of my sadhana is trying to work on that, because I've seen physiotherapists and it's been helpful, but it's not long-term resolution. And I have all the tools for it. I just need to know how to apply them. Thanks for the Gitananda tradition.
So we are coming to tapas.
In the most positive sense of the word, which I think it's meant to be, disciplined life, I feel that I have led a life, or am leading a life, but we're all prone to the same kleshas, and so we often fall away from them, we fall away from our goal. But I see it as positive. Whatever is done, even though it's not comfortable, if there's a long-term benefit, I'm not talking like benefit like what I can gain financially, but benefit in terms of for my spiritual growth, my mindset usually has always been, then let's do it. But then there's laziness, there is overthinking things, there is many other things that are a hindrance, but yes.
So we are ending with ekagrata.
Focus. It's I have a multiple interest, and therefore, and always wanting to try to organize things in such a way that all of these can. And I've found myself being focused more on the organization of what needs to be done than just doing a few things, even if it's not perfect. And I think that's one of the key challenges and one of the keys to being a little bit more for my growth. And myself, and I guess for many other people, is being able to focus on what needs to be done without thinking too far ahead, without just walking. So choosing where to put your focus would be, and not taking too much time to choose, just do it. I'm talking for someone who will think about things for months and months. Like I'll do things, I'll be very efficient in many things. But when it comes to more subtle or more deep things, it can take time to foster. So refocusing on the right thing, but then just doing it.
Wow, beautiful, Srikant. A lovely rapid fire round and 5 previous questions. It has been a pleasure to share satsang with you this evening. And may we continue this association through 3 generations, which started with your father in 1970, then yourself and Aishwarya, and on to both your children, Karin Katya and Govind Ganesh. And so happy to have you, Srikant. And Really, it's been such an opportunity.
Thank you so much, Divya. Thank you so much.
Thank you.